currently our parent-teacher conferences are scheduled in February. And the principals have worked with their staff members to, collaborate and talk about moving those to March. And really the reason for that is, if you remember, in the first semester, we didn't, because of being in blended, by mid-October, we were switching to virtual. We put off our first semester conferences till, I think it was early December. So we just had conferences, 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago. So that's really the primary rationale from simply moving our conferences, which are normally in February, moving them basically out about a month to March. So the elementary is they had some dates and times. Then they're still, determining the exact dates, times, but they definitely will be in March. Middle school, high school, McKinley, you can see the dates and times there. Again, just waiting. Hopefully by next week, we'll know what elementary wants to do, but we're just proposing to move them to March. All conferences, again, because of the COVID, will still be done virtual. So I think that one's pretty self-explanatory. But any questions about parent-teacher conferences or moving them to March? Yeah, again, simply because we just had them in early December. Okay.
That all makes sense.
Yeah. The next one, and I tried to, if you had a chance to look at the document that I attached, try to explain this, but we are looking or asking to add an additional professional development day across all levels. And it would either be the 29th or 30th of April. And, it's going to depend if it's the 29th or 30th, depending if we need or don't need the weather makeup day. But so we are asking to actually add another professional development day in the second semester. Right now, there currently are 2 on the calendar already. So there's actually one coming up next Monday, the 25th of January. There's one on March 19th. Again, so those 2 are already on the calendar. And again, we're proposing to add really a third staff development day. Again, it would either be the 29th or the 30th, depending if we need our weather makeup day. So I talked a little bit through the rationale, if you've had a chance to look at that. Questions, comments?
Yeah, I do. I thought we had resolved some of the weather makeup issue days quite a bit earlier with being virtual, and why couldn't we still have a virtual day for our kids, thereby kind of eliminating that unknown, right? Are we thinking that we will be in school face-to-face, but why couldn't we still do it as a virtual day then, so we don't have the weather issue?
Yeah, it's a great question. So here's what we've kind of shared with our staff about snow days or weather days. If we can notify our staff and families prior to the end of a school day for the next day, that would be a snow day, we absolutely would be virtual. Because then staff, so if we say at 2 o'clock, 2 o'clock on a Tuesday, because it's starting to snow, it's going to snow all night. We're expecting 10 inches. So we say at 2 o'clock, the next day is going to be a snow day, or, staff then can prepare, take their stuff home, make sure they have their, whatever teachers need to teach the next day. So if we can notify staff and families the previous day that the next day is going to be don't come to the building, a weather day, absolutely, then we would expect our teachers to teach virtually, our students to learn virtually. If it's a little harder, if, you know, might be unexpected, or maybe we were expecting an inch or two and, you know, it's 4 a.m. and all of a sudden we got 8 inches and it's snowing and blowing, and we may have to have a weather day or a snow day, because it's going to be a struggle for many teachers to teach from home because they're not going to have their stuff. So I don't know, does that make sense?
It does, except that, you know, as a district, we've historically been pretty conservative, I think, with our snow days. And maybe this is the year that we back off of some of that conservatism, so that we, you know, if we foresee there may be a large storm coming, we just naturally make it a virtual day so that we don't run into issues with the end of our school year.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And I don't know, Mark, maybe you can, we actually absolutely have had discussions about snow days, and with what we've all learned with technology and teaching virtual, it'd be nice to say you don't ever need a snow day anymore, but yeah.
There may be a mutiny on our hands if we do that.
Yeah.
That's just sad. That's just like deflating, you know, but I get it, but it's deflating.
From the Montana population. Yeah. Well, I mean, certainly there would still be some, right? Sorry, Mark.
Yeah, I think with the weather technology, I would tell you that it's easier to just say Snowmageddon's coming and we're having a virtual day tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And then if Snowmageddon doesn't come and we're still learning, right? As opposed to the model that we're in now, you know, Snowmageddon is coming, and then on 6 o'clock that morning, you're looking out your window and you've got, you know, an inch and a dusting. And then everybody's like, well, why can't you call school back on? Well, it doesn't work that way, right? You're either off or you're not. So yeah, I think, and the more we get used to this, the less time I'll need. But I think from the student's perspective in a blended model too, like, well, who's on the next day, right? Like that whole, if I'm on this day, who's on the next day? Is that yesterday's snow day? Likely the idea will be, we'll call it early, because it's easier to call it early when you have a plan, as opposed to calling it early. And believe me, outside of the pandemic, I got a lot of calls from parents who were like, why did we have snow day, right? And I have to work. Why aren't the kids in school? Well, so that'll be easy, and the Brant bus will work better. I mean, so, you know, moving forward, we'll know how to do that well.
Joyce,
So
I have
again,
one question. Go ahead.
Nope, go ahead, Lisa.
Okay, I have one question about these development days. I was not able to open your attachment, so I don't know if you kind of described what the substance of those teacher development days are. If you could just briefly explain what they'll be doing during those days.
Yeah. So again, certainly on this additional day, at the elementary level, that day at the end of April, 29th or 30th, that aligns with their Bridges training, Bridges unit of study. So at the elementary level, that morning, they would do like 2 hours of Bridges training. After that, the staff have the time to collaborate with their peers, planning time, do some other work that needs to get done. So that's what will happen at the elementary level. And then at middle school and high school, again on the 29th or 30th of April, you know, we've said that principals, you know, have the discretion to do, you know, up to 2 hours of, you know, a staff meeting or some kind of training. But the remainder of the day would again be for staff to use it as best. It's a work day. It's a full work day. We're not saying you can just go home after those 2 hours or not work. but that, the principals would have the discretion to have up to 2 hours of a staff meeting or a training. After that, the staff have the discretion to, again, collaborate with their peers, do some planning, do, whatever they need to do, to get, to work. It's a full work day. So,
Okay.
So
Yeah.
how would we be with our DPI minutes if we're throwing in an entire day of professional development? Or I guess
so it
it's
would
not-
it'd be a no student day. Mark, I think I'll let you address the whole issue of minutes and DPI and.
Yeah, the board did approve a waiver of minutes earlier. I want to say April or November, or April, I mean, November.
Oh, yeah.
It was September, I don't know. It was early in the year. And we will articulate that the number of minutes, instructional minutes that we have can only be counted during our virtual time or during our face-to-face time. So, the DPI provided all school districts with an approved waiver if we went to the board and if the board approved that. So we've been approved for a waiver. So I guess the reality is, yes, we're asking for one more day of instructional training, knowing that our teachers are still, hopefully we're back in a 5-day-a-week face-to-face, but we're asking them to do all kinds of things that they've never done before. And we're trying to give them time to work and collaborate together. And this would be then the push for the rest of the year. So the April would be the beginning of the third or the fourth quarter. And then all the details that we need to finish the year, assessments that we've done, start to redevelop those pieces. So minute-wise, it's not going to be an issue because we've done that. And typically, I would tell you that our district has built in minutes to the extent of some days that we would, on a typical year, meet and wouldn't have to make up, for example, snow days if we didn't want to. We generally, for the elementary, have about 6 days, and for the middle school and high school, about 4 days of additional minutes that would be, I shouldn't say additional, that exceed the minimum requirements. How's that sound?
Okay. So just more out of curiosity, April 30th is, why is that a no school day? Does it fall on a holiday or like, I didn't look into that, I guess.
April, oh, no, Mark, go ahead. Lisa, if you can open it, I put the link to this, I put this attachment. I linked it in the chat, so maybe you'll be able to open it there. Go ahead, Mark.
So Kathy, in all honesty, we choose typically on a typical year, 1 day per year to be what we call a weather makeup day.
Oh, yeah.
And April 30th is that day. So if we have a day where we have to cancel school because of weather, then we make it up on April 30th.
Okay.
If we don't have to make it up on weather, then we don't have school on April 30th.
Okay. So I guess it leads me to one more question about this, and I'm sorry to keep going, but why not make that additional professional day on a Friday, which we're naturally not like in class then anyway, instead of doing a Thursday?
Right. So great question. We originally that was our plan, but what happens is, so think of it this way: our teachers have a 185-day contract, and the weather makeup day is not a contract day unless we don't work for a day. That makes sense. So
Sure.
that April 29th, actually that Friday, is a day off for everybody because it's not in a contract if we don't make it up. So that would mean the Thursday would be the day that with the last day of the semester. And a part of the rationale of where it is it has to be spaced that meets the timeline of what we're doing with that Bridges training for the elementary folks. And so that starts their next, like they have to have it in advance so that when they're moving forward in May and the beginning of June, that they have the training for that.
Okay.
So that's generally why it falls there.
Okay.
And then again, just the opportunity to extend that training time for the rest of the year. the other thing that I would say is I'm hopeful that we're going to be in person by that time. And so then Fridays won't be a day off anyway,
Anyway,
right?
fingers crossed.
So, I mean, my first thought was we're just going to make it that day. But then Joyce and her brilliance reminded me that we would just be adding a teacher day, and we can't do that. You can't just add a day to their work, if that makes sense. You can't just say, well, now you've got 186 days. Well, back up. We could do that, but we would have to pay them. And that, that's not where we're at yet.
It becomes a budgetary issue.
A big one. Yeah. It's about $220,000 per day.
Yeah. So, okay, understood. Thank you for clarifying that, though, because that would have kept being a question in my mind. So,
Okay, Joyce, do you need a motion that we move this forward to the whole board?
Yeah, I know technically the calendar doesn't have to be approved by the board, but that's been our past practice, Lisa, that the board does approve the calendar or any changes to the calendar. So if we want to follow past practice, I would say, right, need a motion to move this forward, for the full board to vote on it. Yeah.
Okay, can I have a motion and a second from either Meredith or Kathy?
Getting my mouse in the right spot. I will make the motion to approve the calendar.
okay, and I will second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so
All right.
we'll move it to the January 26th or the meeting in February, Joyce. It's up to you.
I think we want to, if we can still get it, I think we put it on the agenda for Tuesday,
Okay,
next Tuesday. Is that possible, Mark? Yeah. Guess we'd like to
Okay.
get the information out if we can.
If we can,
Sure.
we'll have it on there. I just have to make sure it's in a new business. But I couldn't put it in a new business until the board committee approved it. I didn't want to be presumptuous that it was going to happen. So I think we will be able to do that.
okay. All right,
If
so then,
I was just
Go
going to say,
ahead.
if not Tuesday, it'll be the first meeting in February.
sure. Okay, very good. Okay, item number 3, lane movement. Again, I'll hand that over to Joyce.
Yeah, I don't know if you were able to open that document that I shared, Butter, in the chat. We have lane movement for our teachers. Again, teachers can, complete 12 credits, get a master's degree, and then move to the next lane or next level. And right now, what our handbook says is that teachers who, submit their transcripts, submit their request for a lane movement, if they do it before October 1st, it'll result in the applicable salary increase retro to the first day of the school year. So that's great. That's fine. Don't want to change that. But the change would be that we want to add another opportunity for staff to submit for lane movements. So, everything stays the same, other than we would also add lane movements submitted by February 1st will result in the applicable salary increase retro to the first day of the second semester. Years ago, it was even been here years ago, it was stated that way. There were 2 options. For some reason, it got just to 1 opportunity a year. Here's the rationale. Inevitably, this is what happens every year. Right now it's October 1st. Inevitably, October 15th, a teacher will put in a request for a lane movement, and the deadline's passed by 2 weeks. Technically, if we're following the handbook, they would have to wait another whole year, basically, to move a lane and get their $1,500. So that doesn't feel good. And I can tell you it happens every year that somebody turns something in about 2 weeks late. So that's one reason for adding a second one. But the other thing that happens is, teachers will finish their credits or earn their master's degree, for example, in December. And again, instead of making them wait till the start of the next school year, they just have this second opportunity to request the lane movement and get the applicable salary increase. So it's really it's a win for our teachers, quite honestly. So again, we're just asking to give them another, instead of one opportunity, just one opportunity in a year, giving them another opportunity to put in a request for a lane movement. So, any questions about that?
How soon after, when they put their request in, do they get their bonus?
Yeah, so again, those that turn it in by October 1st, it's actually retro to the start of the school year. And if I turn it in by February 1st, the pay increase goes back to the start of the second semester, which is typically, end of January. So yeah, we get that processed right away. So again, it's really a win for the teachers. It's another opportunity for them to turn in a lane movement versus having to wait a fairly long period of time.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so do you have a comment, Kathy?
Oh, it just totally makes sense to me though. When our teachers are working hard to improve themselves and it improves the education of our kids, why wouldn't we give them that benefit, right? And yeah, it makes sense. And the timing is great.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep, I agree. Okay, Joyce, do you need a motion and a second to move that forward?
Yeah, here again, because it's a handbook change, those need to be approved by the full board. So yes, please.
I would make the motion that we make the change to the handbook as written.
I second it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, so that
right.
will be brought to the full board when you want to bring it. Okay, item number 4, blended learning strategic approaches to minimize teacher absences. So why don't we start that discussion right now?
Yeah, I just want to really share with the board and kind of keep you informed, kind of what we're doing. When you think about moving into blended learning, one potential challenge is staffing. Because of course we're still in a pandemic. Employees are still going to get COVID. They're going to have to quarantine for a variety of reasons. We know that our protocols are if you have, one new or unexplained symptom, you have to stay home. So again, we know that there's some potential staffing challenges with staff and students returning to the building. So I guess, again, I just want to share with you some strategic approaches to minimize those challenges. The first one is not different than what we implemented at the beginning of the year. I know we worked hard to secure a full-time substitute teacher for all of our buildings. And the 2 middle schools and the high school actually have 2 full-time substitute teachers. So that definitely is helpful and has helped. So we will continue to utilize and have a full-time substitute teacher in all of our buildings. Some will have 2, the secondary. Also, something that we're going to implement moving forward that we didn't have at the beginning of the year is had many conversations with our principals starting in end of November, start of December, when we were again anticipating, hoping to come back blended, was that if I'm a teacher, for example, and if I have to quarantine, whether I'm a close contact, symptomatic, test positive, and we know some of those quarantine periods can be, 10 days. So if I'm a teacher that has to quarantine, if I'm in a position that lends itself to teach remotely, which most of our teachers, it works in our models, and I feel well enough, then those teachers moving forward will be teaching from home. Their kids are still going to be in the classroom. They're going to be logging onto their Chromebooks, wearing headsets, and there'll be another adult staff member supervising and supporting in the classroom. So again, I could be the fourth grade teacher at Jefferson who has to quarantine. I might not even have symptoms, but even if I'm symptomatic and if I feel they're very mild and I feel well enough, I'm going to still teach my fourth grade students. I'm just going to be doing it from home. Now they're going to be sitting in the classroom and logging onto their Chromebooks with another adult supervising in that room. So I'm excited about that. Definitely have buy-in from our principals. It won't work all the time, but definitely at the elementary level and the high school level, for most teachers, this will work. And generally speaking at the middle school. But again, it's something we really did, I shouldn't say really, we didn't do this at the beginning of the year when we were in blended learning. But again, this is another strategic approach that should minimize staffing issues. So I'm going to pause. I have one more that I want to talk about, but another approach. But any questions about that?
No, but I am glad you brought up the substitutes because, we have had substitute issues for years, and especially when it comes time to spring. We've been shorthanded every single year, and I've been one for 14 years. So I just want to make sure that we're thinking ahead here and that maybe we have that posted on our website, the need for substitute teachers. People would be aware that we're not necessarily using them at this moment, but I think that we need to have an aggressive approach at retaining who we have and gaining others, whether it be for this school year or for next. I don't know that that's on our website or that it's on, what's it called? It's like the DPI site for job postings.
We can.
Yeah, we can. Thank you. But, I think that's been on my mind a lot, actually. And of course, it's gotten shoved to the back because we've been dealing with so many other things. But having this anticipation of hopefully being able to go face to face, or even talking about what you're bringing up right now, having bodies in the classroom, I think we need to get that onto our website and post it on We Can, or just even, I don't know if we could put it in a letter, but just to have an aggressive approach to that. So.
Most often in the, talking about, again, teachers who are quarantined, teaching from home, kids are in the building, logged onto their Chromebooks, another adult in the building. Oftentimes, it could be the full-time substitute teacher. It could be one of our instructional aides. It could be, someone who's already working in the building. But I think it definitely will help as an approach to minimize any staffing issues.
It will, but the whole reason we went virtual was because of that staffing issue. That was our emergency, right? Was that we were above and beyond our capacity to handle how many people were out. So I just encourage, looking for quality substitute teachers is not a negative in any kind of way, right? I just think that that should be one of our aggressive approaches. And essentially because there's been a shortfall every single year for many years now. It's nothing new. So.
Yeah.
So Joyce, you're saying that in those circumstances, kids would be able to plug in there in the classroom. Is that something like we've communicated that they all need earbuds with microphones, or how is that being handled?
Yep, part of these meetings and discussions to plan and roll this out was absolutely with our technology folks. So we have ample supply of earbuds and in the elementary buildings, because like kindergarten, first and second, sometimes they struggle with earbuds. So we got little plastic headsets. So we've got some supply of extra Chromebooks in every building for a student who might not have their Chromebook that day. So we absolutely included our technology folks in this planning. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
And then just
I have to say, we've been doing that staffing model out here at the college when we've had faculty on quarantine who are feeling fine.
Right.
Same kind of thing. We have a lab assistant in the room, and it's worked really well.
Yeah, thank you.
You know, particularly in that staffing pinch,
Right.
where, you know, you may or may not get a substitute who can run equipment and teach kids in the room. And so it really kind of minimizes that heightened training that may need to occur. So yeah, I think it's a good model.
Yeah, thank you, Meredith. Like I said, we really didn't, and some of it was just timing and the time it takes. I mean, we did not have that implemented in that expectation, you know, those first 6 weeks, you know, September through early October. So again, I think it's definitely another approach that's going to help. So, and again, other districts are using it. And like you said, LTC is using very similar type concept. So the other thing that, again, I think will help with some potential staffing challenges is, and again, real excited about this. Jenny Hinz, our COVID nurse, as well as our other nurses, super excited that we are now up and running with being a on-site COVID drive-up testing for our employees. And it's a partnership with, it's something that CISA offers. So we worked with them to get it started, and, you know, the planning, the implementation, our nurses were very much involved with this. We are using Lincoln High School back around the building. So there's a little more privacy. There's a designated parking spot. They don't even get out of their vehicle. But I can tell you that, so we started that Tuesday the 19th, just this week was the first date. Where it works well is staff, again, not just teachers, any staff that are symptomatic. You wake up, you have some symptoms. And again, our protocol is if you have any one new or explained symptom, you can't come to work. That's our health and safety protocol. So now when you, again, wake up with a symptom, got to report it. Jenny Hinz is going to talk to you specifically about having a test. You can be tested that same day, and we've been getting the results early the next morning. So again, the beauty is if it's negative, that person can come back in the building. Now, granted, if they are really sick with something, a bad cold or a bad flu, they're probably not going to come to work. But if they've got real mild symptoms and the test is negative, you know, the most they're going to miss is 2 days. So that's really when this will be used. If somebody is deemed a close contact of somebody who's positive, they've got to quarantine. I mean, this COVID testing isn't going to help that situation. If you're deemed a close contact, you've got to quarantine a certain amount of time with or without symptoms. So, but it's been great. This week we tested throughout the Tuesday through today, 10 of our staff, and several of them were negative test. And those people were able to come back the next day and work in the building if they were working in the building this week. So again, the nurses are thrilled, and the staff that have used it, it's easy, it's simple, it's accessible. They drive up, they don't get out of their car. You know, we've been finding out by, 7 in the morning if it's positive or negative. And it is the PCR test. So again, another strategic approach to try to get people back in buildings sooner. And so far, so good, very positive. So again, just want to share some of the things we're trying to do to minimize any staffing challenges with our return to blended. So any questions on that? Okay.
Okay, so our final item on the agenda is budget staffing. So
Yeah, thank you. Probably just brief, this is also the time of year that we start all of our staffing meetings, discussions, our timelines, get meetings with principals. So, that will still go on, obviously. In the past several years, we've gone into our staffing process with a cost neutral, staffing budget. So that if we reduced anywhere, we typically used those dollars, those salaries, and allocated them to a different position. So you remember, like we've, if we were able to, because of enrollment, reduce an elementary classroom teacher, we were able to reallocate those dollars, and we've hired some math coaches and some other positions. So it was a cost neutral staffing budget. I think Mark, and I'll let you talk about the budget piece, but this year may look a little different because we know that assuming we pass the referendum, it's likely we still will have to reduce our total budget by $350,000 over the next couple of years. Now, that doesn't have to be all staff. It could be staff. It could be a program or a service. But we know that we're likely going into this staffing budget process knowing that we've got to make some reductions versus a cost neutral position. So Mark, you explain the budget piece better than I do, so I'll let you talk about that or why that is.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say you explained it very well. Our referendum that we're moving forward with would be a $4.3 million referendum. Knowing that we currently have $3.5 million in our referendum, and we're taking about $1.3 million out of our fund balance, that there's a shortfall there. And we need to, and this was based on some communication we had at the Finance Committee, we need to, over the next few years, make some reductions because we can't continue to take $1.3 million out of our fund balance. It's just not sustainable. So rather than trying to do that over 1 year, like take all of it in 1 year, we'd like to begin a process where we begin that process every year for the next 3 years. And I would articulate, in all honesty, year one will be easier than year two because we'll have, and then year two will be, harder than one, but easier than three. And as you go forward, there's just, we're going to get tighter and tighter and tighter. But, the reality is that our budget number that we're moving forward with is going to have to be something that we look really, really tight at. So I anticipate us looking at all the spots that we have, not that we don't do that, but even tighter. And the dollar amount has to be sustainable every year. So if we reduce, for example, a budgetary item, we're going to reduce our paper budget by 10%. That means that paper has to be cut by 10% forever, not just for 1 year. So that's why staffing is always one of those pieces where it comes back. Not that we have a vision that all the money will come from staffing, but that's something that's then sustainable. If you decide to add something, you have to find a place out of your current budget to get it. So I think that's the project that we're moving forward with. Obviously, when we have recommendations to any of those, we'll bring them to the committees and the full board. But in January, that's the mindset we're starting with.
Just to clarify, so this is even if our referendum passes, we need to look at this?
Yeah, we asked for what we thought we would get, not what we need. That's the true statement. Like, if you take the 3.5 and add 1.3 that we're taking out of fund balance, you get the 4.8. That's with no increases for anything moving forward, right? Just roll everything forward. No additional expenses for salaries, benefits, budget, capital improvements, anything. So, yes, we are. But I'm confident we can do it strategically. And I guess my point being is that in an $80 million budget, we can find $350,000, right? But as you continue to do that year after year, that process gets much, much, much more difficult. And I use 3 years because that'll be the end of the referendum then. And then we'll have some, hopefully at that point, we won't be using fund balance to balance our budget.
Yeah, that makes complete sense to me, Mark. And, you know, unfortunately, a lot of institutions do need to do that. But I think you're right. I think, you know, year one, we'll find those pockets to be able to, you know, what some of the cream that we've enjoyed, but, you know, can do without, right? And to lean down. But that second year is always kind of the hardest. So, yeah. But it makes sense. I mean, you know, at this time, we can't go to referendum and ask for more. There's just no, it would be doomed from the onset instead of being able to have a logical conversation and, you know, no increase essentially to what the taxpayer sees. So that's a very logical choice.
I agree.
I'm just
Okay.
sad.
You're what, Kathy?
Just sad. I mean, just
You know, but that's the education business, Kathy, on the, you know, on the end that maybe, you know,
Yeah.
it's not the end that the public always sees, but that is, yeah, that's normal, unfortunately.
well, and that's true in any business, but it's just not the pretty side.
Right.
So
Okay, are there any more comments before we adjourn?
I had a quick question, personnel related. I'm just wondering, are all of our teachers ready and trained and on board for Tuesday? I had gotten some feedback that some were very uneasy, feeling like they needed some more training. And I guess what training have they received to be able to do kind of this blended model? And is that all ready to go?
I do know, I don't know, I don't want to speak for Joyce, but our teachers had the afternoons at the elementary and secondary level this week. And I saw a very robust training program what we did for teachers to be able to practice the virtual while students are here in the secondary level. I would tell you that there is always going to be a little bit of anxiousness because we haven't done it before, but I do know the models we moved to had lots of feedback. And I think we even heard from the middle school at our MEA meeting that the middle school teacher was ready to go. Like, yep, I'm ready to go. We've got this. We're excited about people coming back. So we'll keep listening to those folks whom are a little anxious and try to make some tweaks. And I'll be honest, the reality is 5 days a week is easier than blended because you're not juggling two platforms, right?
Absolutely.
But until we can get ready to bring everybody back and start to, get this, do it well and move people back, we're going to have to juggle a little bit. And we'll just keep and again, our teachers are doing a great job. We hear that from parents quietly, but I'm confident that they'll rock this piece, and the kids will have a little bit more face-to-face time than they had in our first blended model, and that will be better, right? Just a little bit more than we had before, but the training was an afternoon after I taught in the morning, right? So, I mean, it's not like we took days off to do this. They had to do it, incorporate in what they were doing and try to balance that. So They have today is grade report day. There's some in-service training that we're doing on Monday, but not the whole day. And hopefully we'll be able to answer questions today and Monday if people are still a little apprehensive about it, because kids will be coming on Tuesday.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I know too. Yeah, I think what we're all talking about is this same time teaching or same time learning, as they call it. That will now be different than at the middle school and high school, different than what they were doing at the beginning of the year. And again, I think staff are positive about it. I think it's a positive step forward, but of course there's angst because of the technology. But I also, in addition to whatever supports training, trying out their headsets and their microphones and whatever these, technology, I also know that, it'll be all hands on deck for our technology folks. Not that they normally aren't, because they are, but it'll be all hands on deck, next week for all of our, technology folks in our building to help and support. And day 1 probably won't be perfect. Day 2 will be a little bit better. Day 3, a little bit more, but it'll take some time. And as we all know, some staff will adjust quicker and easier than others. I'd probably struggle a little bit more, but I think the model is definitely, it was good in fall. There's much more buy-in and support for this, but it'll take a few days. So
Yeah, it's hard. I'm not going to lie. It's hard to do, but it's completely doable too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I think it'll be better, it'll be better for our, I think it's better for our students. But like I said, day 1 will be, day 2 will be a little better, day 3. And again, I know all hands on deck from technology. So.
Yeah. Well, and I'm glad you have their PLCs are built in so they can be able to have that time to share, what they've learned and those best practices. And I would imagine some of that technology stuff may take over some of those time frames when they're talking with one another.
Yeah.
Thanks for answering that.
Yeah. Boy, you think back what our staff did, think of how quick we had to switch in March. Like, okay, we're all going virtual 100%. Wow. I can't even imagine what, how much our staff learned and has grown and developed with. So again, this is another bit of a change, especially at the middle school and high school, but yeah.
So Joyce, just going back, I'm going to go back to the sub thing. Do you foresee being able to start requesting for subs and putting that on our website?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. I just wasn't sure I fully understood where you were at with that. So that would be great.
Okay. If we have no other business, then I will take a motion to adjourn.
Sure. I'll motion that we adjourn for this meeting.
And I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great. Okay. Thank
We have
you.
officially accomplished 3 meetings in 3 days, friends. And I think I've been the motion to adjourn at each one of them.
No,
Yeah.
I had to do it last night.